Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to participate in this debate, though I suspect, like many in the Chamber, I wish this was not a debate that we were not having to have. I find it deeply regrettable that we are in this situation, and no more was that underscored for me yesterday when visiting pupils at St Benedict's High School in Linwood, in my constituency of Renfrewshire South, because it is a generation of young people who are going to be deprived of opportunities and chances which my generation and generations preceding mine have been able to take for granted. But in engaging with young people, I seek always to look for opportunities to be positive and to discuss the future, regardless of the situations that we find ourselves in. And no opportunity affords that more than the opportunity to talk to modern studies classes in our high schools. And in speaking to the S3 Modern Studies class at St Benedict's yesterday, I was posed a range of different questions, some about my own personal background, some about matters as trivial as what are the names of my pugs. But I was asked one question which really stopped me and floored me. I've often asked about what are the responsibilities of an MSP, and I'm able to iterate and list them off, but I was asked, what is your biggest responsibility as an MSP? And that certainly gave me cause for thought. What is the biggest responsibility of an MSP? We who are privileged to sit and to stand at these desks in our national parliament, who may only have a fleeting period of time here, what is our biggest responsibility? And I have to say, and I don't wish to sound too grandiose in saying so, but I believe it is a duty to preserve and to strengthen democracy, particularly as we find ourselves at the end of this decade in a world where populism and even extremism is rearing its ugly features, whether that be in Trump in the United States, or Front National in France, or Alternative for Deutschland, or the regimes currently in power in Poland and in Hungary, and menacing democracies elsewhere across the continent. So when members from all sides rise and speak of the importance of respecting the result in 2016, that is something I take very, very seriously. And I think it's a well-made point, but it's a point which I feel requires further discussion and further debate. And I think, firstly, what we have to ask ourselves is, why did people vote to leave? Why did over 17 million people in the UK, why did a majority in England, a majority in Wales, and over one-third of our fellow Scots choose to vote leave? And I think there's a number of reasons, but I would suspect it's a very small number of people who did so out of pure ideological reasons, because they imagine the UK taking a role of a Hong Kong on steroids in the mid-Atlantic as a buccaneering free trade state. I think it's a minority, a very small minority at that, because we believe that regulations made in Europe impinge upon their life in a negative way. Rather, I think what was the driver of much of the leave vote, particularly in many communities in England, was the gross and entrenched inequalities that exist across the UK. Economic inequalities, geographical inequalities, jobs lost over decades to globalisation and automation, the persistent scapegoating of immigration by the right-wing tabloid press. And I feel that these sentiments, legitimate sentiments, but sentiments of genuine anger and frustration, were hijacked and manipulated by a class of, frankly, Tory ideologues at Westminster who have never reconciled themselves to the loss of an empire that predates their own birth, an idea that has been brilliantly explored and written upon by the Irish writer and commentator Fintan O'Toole. So what was it these people voted for if they did not vote for this ideological purity or a return of empire? I believe it was, for many, it was frustration to send a message that they were tired of the inequality that persists in many parts of the UK, that they wanted something different, that in many respects, as many of those who voted for Trump did, it was for them a vote for hope, a vote I would disagree with, a vote that I do not believe will deliver what they wish, but it was a vote for something. And if we fail to understand that, then we're in danger of not being able to fundamentally address these issues and drivers which led people to vote for leave. But is Brexit? Yes, certainly.
Liam Kerr.
Isn't the member failing to understand that a whole lot of people in the North East voted to come out because they wanted out of the common fisheries policy?
Tom Arthur.
I recognise the range of reasons And my party's position on the CFP has been well known for decades. But there's a broad suite of reasons for this, and I think it is incumbent upon us as parliamentarians to seek to explore that. And the question is, will Brexit deliver for those people? Will it address the concerns that people have? And I think if we are being honest with ourselves, we know perfectly well that it will not. It will not in itself address inequality. It will not address lack of opportunity. And fundamentally, what has been produced in the withdrawal agreement is unworkable. It is riddled with irreconcilable paradoxes. The paradox of wanting close association with the European Union, but the capacity to engage in trade with other nations. It is simply not possible. One cannot have both. It seeks to reduce immigration, but the reality is, to get anywhere in trade negotiations with China or India, there will have to be relaxations on visa rules. And we have already seen the increase in immigration from outside the EU, which will offset the immigration that was coming from within the EU. And on the issue of preserving standards and presenting Britain and the UK as a world-class producer of goods, this will mean compromising our standards, as has been made clear by the revelations of what the United States would be demanding in trade negotiations. And the withdrawal agreement does not confront any of these issues. It sits in a status of paradox. It is rather like the paradox of Buridan's ass, which tells of a donkey at an equidistance between a pail of water and a bucket of water in a haystack. And this starving, dehydrated donkey cannot choose which one to go for, so it dies. And that is the reality of the withdrawal agreement. Now, Buridan's paradox is about the difference between determinism and free will. And the issue of determinism is important because this withdrawal agreement is a result of red lines that the Prime Minister did not have to set. But these red lines have led to this path. And the negotiation itself, which has led to this miserable compromise, which cannot command the support of the House of Commons, it is a result of a Prime Minister who has shown utter incompetence in these negotiations, not only in setting the red lines, but in triggering Article 50, the one card that she could play, triggering it prematurely. Presiding Officer, you're indicating my time's up, but I hope I've been able to contribute something to this debate. Thank you.